Okay, the reading for the sermon this morning is taken from Luke chapter 8. While Jesus was speaking, a Pharisee invited him to dinner, so Jesus went in and took his place at the table. The Pharisee was amazed to see that Jesus did not first wash before dinner. Then Jesus said to the Pharisee, "Now you Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness. Did not the ones who made the outside make the inside also? So give for alms those things that are within, and see everything will be clean for you. But woe to you Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and herbs of all kinds, and neglect justice and the love of God. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. Woe to you Pharisees, for you love to have the seat of honor in the synagogues and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces. Woe to you, for you are like unmarked graves, and people walk over them without realizing it." One of the lawyers answered Jesus, "Teacher, when you say these things, you insult us too." And Jesus said, "Woe also to you lawyers, for you load people with burdens hard to bear, and you yourselves do not lift a finger to ease them. Woe to you, for you build the tombs of the prophets whom your ancestors killed. So you are witnesses and approve of the deeds of your ancestors, for they killed them, and you build their tombs. Therefore also the wisdom of God said, I will send them prophets and apostles, some of whom they will kill and persecute, so that this generation may be charged with the blood of all the prophets shed since the foundation of the world, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who perished between the altar and the sanctuary. Yes, I tell you, it will be charged against this generation. Woe to you lawyers, for you have taken away the key of knowledge, and you did not enter yourselves, and you hindered those who were entering." When Jesus went outside, the scribes and Pharisees began to be very hostile, and to cross-examine him about many things, lying in wait to catch Jesus in something he might say. In all the years of us being here, I don't think we've ever contemplated this passage. It's a little bit intense, and there's a few other passages in the Bible where Jesus is pretty ruthless in a way. He's not emotionally taking care of these groups of people. He's calling out the truth. And the groups that generally are targeted for this type of light are the Pharisees, the scribes, and the lawyers. And if you think about what these learned people represent, so the scribes represent education, because scribes is about writing and about language. The Pharisees represent religion and spirituality. The lawyers represent the justice system. So these are huge systems that could thrive if they were based in truth. And if the people who were responsible to be the leaders in these groups were committed to the truth. And he is saying that they are not. They are creating unnecessary burdens because of their desire to be celebrated, to be seen as special, to load burdens upon people, whether it be for financial gain or simply because they're angry or it's hard, it's too much work, to be honest. So this has sort of been a theme that's coming up through our last week. We talked about truth and people's fear of speaking truth in the sermon. And it was a little bit intense. And then in Bible class we did a passage about Lazarus and how Lazarus, not the one that Jesus raised from the dead, but another Lazarus, who was basically starving to death outside the gate of the rich man, and the rich man did not lift a finger to help him. So I want to provide a message today to you that gives you some clarity in terms of what it means to be a child of light in the world. That there is a rampant degree of hypocrisy that you will experience daily. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about how we have that within, because everybody has certain hypocrisies in comparison to God. It's a lifelong work to minimize your own personal hypocrisy. And there's a lot of compassion and grace for those who are striving to do that, which is what our group here is about. It's, in a way, you could say, I mean, there's many ways to categorize it. You could say, well, it's about finding God. It's about following Christ. It's about refining yourself. For today's message, it's about minimizing the gap between the hypocrisy, between your truth and the way that you act, because those discrepancies represent hypocrisy. But you have many, many millions of people who recognize that they are living hypocritically, and they don't care because of the gains that they stand to earn as a result of that. And you have to be able to move amongst people like that without hating them and without condemning them. At the same time, what is Jesus' example teaching us in this passage? That he is not pampering them, and he's not feeling sorry for them, because that, to me, is condescension to the soul. He's basically saying, this is what you're doing, and woe to you. The consequences of living that way are significant. In a lot of ways, you can think of Jesus as somebody who came to the earth to go like, hey, wake up, people. You don't live without consequences. And that creates this tremendous amount of people go like, ugh, I can't stand that religion. Everything I do is wrong and nothing's right. How about some of the things I do are off? And it would be great if somebody could teach me how to do it right. I mean, that's love. That God would send somebody into your life to help you make sense of where what you're doing is going to cause you problems. Even if you've got a really sincere heart, and at times you're misguided because you were wounded in your childhood, or you were taught certain things that were off, but you went, well, I don't know, they seem to know what they're doing, so I'll follow that. But your soul is going like, I want to know what's true, and I want to live what's true. So you could say, well, Jesus was sent to teach us. And then for those of you who seek out a place like this, you go, well, thank God we have a place. And one point, even now, you will be that hand, and you will be that voice, and you will be that light for somebody going like, how do I do life? You seem to have figured this out. Now, they don't realize that you spend a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years sorting through your own stuff, being taught, being guided, stumbling, getting back up, praying, being forgiven, crossing lines, seeking forgiveness. I mean, you've lived through the battle. And as a result, your heart is softened, and your sight is sharp. And you can say the things that a soul who needs help can hear. And a soul who stands there and goes like, Jesus, I noticed you came in here and you didn't wash. You know, what's the energy of that? Well, we're way beyond where you are, Master, in quotes. And Jesus like, really? You know, things come up sometimes in your process that seem accidental, but they actually help to reveal something that needed to be seen. So whether Jesus forgot to wash or he didn't wash purposely so that this would come up, you can be pretty assured that it was all held in God. And it gave him the opportunity to say, you know, here you are proclaiming to be children of God, and yet you consciously prevent people who seek to know God through laying burdens upon them, through practices that just make it impossible for humble, gentle people to know what they need to know. Some of us were hanging out yesterday, and Serena shared a story of some teenagers that were using their phones to film somebody they saw, a person drowning in a pond. Now, I don't know the details as much. She can tell you more about it. But the essence of it is that they're laughing and they're going, oh my God, I think he's going to die. Nobody raised a hand to save this person. And he actually did die. Now, how do you stand by and watch somebody suffer like that? It's just unfathomable. When your heart is open, it's unfathomable. So do you think Jesus would come along and say to those teenagers, well, you know, that was a little off? No, he'd be like, what the hell are you doing? That is pathetic and sick. That's what it is, to watch somebody die and make it entertainment and then put it on the internet. I mean, when he talks about the generation that is sick, okay, I get very intense about it because I feel it daily. Now, coming back to how do we as children of light maneuver within this world when that is sort of the accepted way of being, where people find joy and glee in watching the suffering of other people? Well, it begins with recognizing that we all have a discrepancy of hypocrisy. All of us have a gap between the truth that we know and the truth that we can fulfill. And God sees that. The defining piece is, are you trying to reduce that gap? Are you doing something about it? Because if you are, the love of God is just huge, because it's difficult. It's difficult in a world that basically celebrates getting away with stuff. If you are not, woe to you is the message. Because at some point, you will experience the consequences of living that way. And maybe this is where certain religions get a bad name. Because it's so heavy, it's so intense. Look around at the world, there's a reason why. Now, it doesn't have to be heavy and intense for us, for you, because we're on the side of those who are striving to minimize the gap. And even if you slip up a day or two here and there because it's like, it's too much work, I can't do it all. Ultimately, your decision, you're not flip the switch back to, I'm in the world and who cares about anybody else, and this is kind of fun watching other people suffer, and if I can profit from it, all the better. I don't see you as making that choice. So as long as your switch is flipped over to, I'm striving to minimize the gap, then grace be upon you. And you celebrate the arrival of Jesus, and you don't mind the pressure, because the pressure is what's pushing you to fulfill this task. And yes, we know it's difficult, it's challenging. But when you see hypocritical action, when you see sick things, don't think that the Christian modality is to be compassionate for the one who is perpetuating them. You know, that's not right. When you have people who are suffering because of the hypocrisy and the greed and selfishness of somebody, then you may be called to do something about it. And if that makes you unpopular and that costs you your job or that costs you your relationship, I mean, what I say is be willing to face the consequences of standing up for the truth. And that is liberation. Yeah, okay, so, well, I don't want to lose everything. You know, trust in God. Trust in God that you will not lose that which is not meant to be. Now, that takes a lot of faith. So likely, because God knows the level of faith in which you can maneuver, that you can live right now, you're not going to be given some sort of heavy challenge that's beyond the level of what you can handle. God is love, and so love will give you a challenge that you can handle, and that will benefit if you proceed with it. You have to have faith in that. And hopefully your experiences of God up to this point have given you the confidence and the courage to go, God is not going to present me such a huge challenge that I'm supposed to walk into my company and go, this whole thing is a lie. I mean, you probably don't have the development to do that. And that's unlikely to be your calling, because at the same time, Jesus spoke about give to Caesar that which is Caesar's. So we are to follow the rules of society. But Martin Luther King and Gandhi and Jesus stood up against the hypocrisy in a nonviolent way, but a very confident way, and were willing to die for it. And both of them did. Actually, all three of them did. Died for the truth. You know, Martin Luther King and Gandhi were both assassinated. Jesus was murdered. So that gives you an idea that there's a lot of force behind maintaining these systems of hypocrisy. And I wish to heck that the world was not like that, because it makes for a challenging day-to-day life. Because if you can imagine, what would it be like if everybody was committed to following love and cared about each other and just helped each other? How fast things would move. And how exciting it would be. So we're called to be the ones that begin that movement or continue that movement. And that's, that's a gutsy way to live. And I'm very, very happy that we can hang out in this room and talk about it and go like, yeah, I want to be one of those people at the front of the line. Remember, the people at the front of the line tend to get picked off first. So that part, I'm not sure what to tell you about that. So a couple of things before we end the message. Number one is be alert to the hypocrisy that you see. And do not think it is, the Christian value to look away. Learn to use nonviolent communication to stand up for the truth, because a certain percentage of the time you standing up for the truth will give permission to somebody who knows what they're doing is off to go like, wow, I just got woken up here. And praise the Lord for that. That's your discipleship. Be alert to your own hypocrisy and have compassion for it. Meaning you are striving to minimize that gap. When you know things are off and you can't quite not do them, strive to push yourself. Pray. And go about your day-to-day life just, wise as to what the world is about. That the education system is very much about money, at least in this country. These universities have endowments of billions of dollars, and they compete with who's at the top 10 list of how many billions of dollars are sitting around. I mean, I know that's not the whole story. But, you have the religious system, you have institutions that are all about extracting money and creating guilt, and it's like, it's not based in the true connection to God. So, and the legal system, well, I probably talked enough about that. So don't be naive about what this world looks like, and yet maintain your innocence as a child of God, and be willing to see what that life really looks like.